Today we're going to talk a little bit about copy centers, and we're going to talk a little bit about automation and teaching, which is what we're all here about. You know, how do we improve education? How do we take for teachers and for our office and support staff, how do we create efficiencies that they will, one, utilize, and two, will take advantage of? I oftentimes have been accused of being called Mr. Kinko or Ed's Kinkos. I've done 2 copy centers now, and the previous district that I worked in was the first one that we originally began working on this product line with Lexmark engineers, and we did it from the ground up. So pretty much everything about the system Lexmark has customized for schools. I think it may be the first product that has been designed exclusively with schools in mind. They do have corporate uses for this software, but what we're about to see here today and how this works was designed specifically for public schools or any school system. So we'll talk a little bit about what the vision was at the time. I really wanted to change the way copy machines are being used. They're usually islands unto themselves inside of a building. They're sitting there. They may be on the network. They may not be on the network. They're not being controlled or they're not being managed. And how people gain access to them is usually through typically they're assigned a printer and that they're able to print directly to it. But who's monitoring what their printing utilization is? Who's monitoring what they're printing? And do they really need to print it? All good questions. And as far as teachers go, as you know, as a previous technology director early in my life, right, we were always constantly running around trying to figure out who's printing what, how it's being printed, should they be able to print this, are they printing too much, are they printing a little too, not enough, et cetera, and do they really need to print? So we were also looking for integration with our security systems at that time, which is our HID cards, which are proximity cards. So that was part of our design. I wanted to integrate it into our security management, so I wanted to know who the difference was between, and that's where the Active Directory components came in. We were using what we already had. Who was a student? Who was a teacher? Who was an administrator? Were they all going to have the same rights? Of course they weren't. They were going to have different rights based upon who you were. All right. So we basically took that system. We also were looking for, we were looking to integrate it inside of our library so that students had the ability to print from the equipment, the computers, the iPads, mobile devices. We wanted them to be able to print their work when they were in the library, when they were working there. But we also wanted to know what they were printing and how they were printing it. So we also did our point of sales. These are all things that were connected back in through the card, but it leads us to where we are today here. So I had a copy center. I have 2 copy centers now that I've converted. And these copy centers, here's how they got it. This was the process previously. The first part of the process was that you would put it in an inter-office envelope and you would put a sheet on top of it, and it basically was a request sheet. And you'd say, I need 50 copies, I want them pink, I want them stapled in the left-hand corner, and I want 3-hole punch. And it would go through the inter-office mail, and when the inter-office mail got there, the person would take it out, they'd put it on the bed, they would scan it in, and they would produce on these very large machines. Sometimes these machines would be as long as this entire wall here. And it usually was a few people that were in there, maybe anywhere from 1 to 3 people that would be operating it. And then someone would take it through inter-office mail back to them. And it would usually have a rubber band around it, and it would be a completed job. Other ways that we did it was we had the email system. So email became very, very popular. So this person who worked in the copy center would take the job, all right, and then they would print it out like they were going to print out any other job. But there was no order or organization, and you didn't know as the end user, where is my work? Is it being done? When will it come? Is there a problem with the work? There was no communication going back and forth. So it was pretty one-way delivery system here. So what I was looking for is that the most important part of this is that being a teacher, I really didn't want to stand in front of a copy machine anymore. I wanted to take that responsibility as an administrator away from you, all right? And I also wanted you to have many other benefits, which I'll talk a little bit more about. When we take a look at this is that I sold this to our boards on a number of levels. One, there was money involved here, and we were going to save money. All right? And it was going to be a BOCES aidable project, which is one of my concerns. I was looking to get as much aid as possible because I want my state aid and I want my BOCES aid. All right? I wanted to improve our delivery systems, reduce the copying costs to the district itself. I wanted centralized billing and resources. How many of you have to track how much toner you're using on a regular basis? All right, has to fill out a purchase order to do this. All right, Lexmark and BOCES and we all work together. We have a system today where we log on, we basically order what we need, it's all centralized in one spot, and it ships, and it's all automatic, and it's all been approved by our auditors, et cetera, so it is legitimate, it is approved by them, the process that we use. We do have a single point of contact. We can run reports on what our utilization is for toner. It's automated delivery. It comes overnight or within 2 days. And well, we don't have to go through the process of keep recreating POs. We were looking to decrease the amount of printing overall. That's really where we were looking to go. And we also were looking for electronic transmission. And I wanted more than just somebody that was going to come and fix the copy machine for us. All right? I wanted my internal staff to be able to know what's going on with the equipment, how it's being handled. If there's a problem, there's a central resource that's going to take care of it for us. All right? And the parts come overnight, and I see people appear, and they come in and out of district. It's been going on for years this way, but wasn't centralized. So let's go to the next slide here. So we had decentralized, which we had global accountability. So basically, we had copy machines all over the place. You could print from any device that you wanted, that you were attached to, or you could actually walk up to the copy machine and you do it. And I've seen it all. So when I first started in New York City, they used to have in my department, I was a math teacher, they used to have this little thing, you used to plug in this little box into the machine, and it was called your counter. And the counter used to count up all your copies. And right, no one really knew who was doing anything because you used to give it back to the secretary that was in the math department, and she would just get it, and halfway through the month, she'd say to me, oh, we're out of copies. That's it, we're done. And I was like, how could that be? Who used all the copies? And they would never know who did anything for that matter. But here we are, so we have this, we have low accountability at this point in time. We had 2 operators, 3 large copy machines. There was one on this leg, one on this leg, and one in the front. And there was a whole bunch of assembly tables in the center of the room. We had 2 pickups and drop-offs a day. Paper and email submission process, leasing equipment district-wide, which all districts do, obviously, because they want to get their aid. It is eligible for BOCES aid. There was no document management solution that was in place. So as a teacher, as an office worker, if there were things that you did on a repeated basis, you had to resubmit it back into the copy center manually to get it done again. They rescan your document. All right, so as a math teacher, I had a lot of sheets that I used on an annual basis. Being previously a principal, I had my 2nd grade, before they would go on summer recess, they would actually send over 4 cases of reproducible work that they would submit. Much of it was the same every year. Right? But meanwhile, they would rescan this back in over at the copy center, manually standing there, dropping it on the bed, scanning it through. My question was, why will we do this? Network printers with limited people having access. A couple of the offices, you know, because central office is really important. So everybody in central office usually was connected so they could print to the copy machine. Around the district, limited people had access to it, and teachers never had access to print directly to copy machines, right? Because we were trying to keep them, we didn't want them to be printing to those. We thought it might increase their utilization. And many people focusing on photocopying in the district, less time for focusing on the students. And this is where the conversation began for me. And we'll talk about some changes that we made. Forgetting about vendor specific, the idea was that everybody has a relationship with a vendor that provides you with equipment. It was expiring at that time in March of 2012. It had maintenance, consumables, and it was a pool agreement. You went over the pool, sort of like your lease on your car. You go over the pool, there's X amount of per mile, there's X amount per sheet. And it can get quite costly. And we ran over a couple of times. And we had 2 very large machines and 3 mid-sized machines. We spent about $20,000 a month in lease payments plus overages, and I'll talk to you about the money after that, about $250,000 a year. And we had 1.5 million copies per month district-wide, and there was 2 deliveries per day. So that was basically what the show was before, all right? This was the equipment. I don't think it's very important, but you can see the number I'd like you to focus on is that there was 17 points of access in the district when I first started this project. There was 17 places an employee could actually have contact with, all right, to be able to reproduce their work. But I do want you to keep in mind that there was not 17 truly, all right? There was actually only 12 because 5 of them were inside the copy center, and no one went to the copy center except the copy center workers. So around the district, inside of 6 sites, you had about, on the average, 2 opportunities per building to interact with these machines. So let's go forward now. I wanted to create a centralized reproduction department. I really wanted to create Ed's Kinko's, for lack of a better term, but it was Lexmark's Kinko. All right, the copy center, 1 operator, 1 fleet maintainer. We'll talk about what that is there. 13 black and white multifunction printers and 1 color. That was what the original design was. All right, and I'll show you later on. I have a print of it real quick. You can see. We wanted to increase the job delivery schedule, so basically we would only take it electronically. It had to come in the system from this card. All right, it knew who you were because it was connected to our Active Directory, which is Microsoft's management world. All right, I wanted there to be integrity. All right? One of the things that always bothered me as a math teacher is that I would wait for my stuff to come back from the copy center, but yet, all right, how do I know who was looking at these tests? All right? They would all be on the counter down in the main office laying around. Sometimes the jobs actually didn't come, all right? Or they would be sent to a different building. So we found this nice little Italian company out there that we work with that does this wonderful shrink wrapping process. And this is how we actually guarantee the integrity. So we double shrink wrap, and we send out all your jobs this way. So if you think about it as a teacher, and I'll pass a few of these around and check. I had to take these back because these are actually live documents. I had to run down to the copy center and grab them. And don't open them. Test integrity. So what ended up happening with this was, because the teachers, let me tell you something, change is hard for anyone. But when you start talking about changing the process for copying, be prepared for a storm, all right? But if you do it right and you learn from other people's mistakes, and we took our lumps with this, but we learned rather quickly, all right, because people were very concerned about their work. As you take a look at this, you can tell first of all if someone has played with your work or opened your work, et cetera, because it's actually vacuum packed. So the copy center just basically drops those through. We get those back out to you. Standardized equipment across the district, everything's the same. All right, every single machine that's out there is the same, doesn't matter where you are. You can get your work anywhere, anytime. You want to send a document, all right, you send it to the cloud. It's the Lexmark cloud, which is inside of our district. All right, and basically you walk up to any machine that's inside the district, and we'll talk about how many machines we're running today. All right, and you pop your card in there, it knows who you are, and your jobs are inside of there. So we have quota management, so we give people maximums on what they can print, both for black and white and color. We also give them the ability to get it anywhere inside of the district. So it doesn't matter where you are. You can print, you can actually do it from home. So you got a test you're working on, something you want to hand out to the kids the next day. All right, you basically create the document, you send it, and it's sitting there waiting for you. And that's called print release. That's what that product is, all right, which works and complements this actually copy center, all right. And then we got our state aid. We wanted platinum support. We wanted all the equipment. I wanted to go to coterminous leases. I wanted to know at the end of my leasing process that I could take every piece of equipment out, just like we do with our computers, and give it back or buy it for $1 or whatever the process is that we work with BOCES, all right? So I wanted to know what it was going to be, and I needed, for budget planning purposes, I needed that constant dollar figure to know what it was going to be for that period of time and how much state aid I would get back on year 2. All right, now for the document management solution, which you heard Mike speak about, because he is actually evolving into the next area. And then actually I was looking for fiscal responsibility here, all right? How many times did I go through classrooms as a principal, and on the windowsills I would see at the end of the year a whole bunch of stuff that was printed out that was never utilized, that ended up falling into the garbage can or the recycling bins and being thrown away. So it wasn't used for instruction as originally planned, but they thought it was a good idea to send it out last summer, all right, so that when they came back, they had all their printing done for the year, and then they used copies on top of that. So let's talk about how that changed for them, all right? And I'm going to go through that a little bit here with you today. The idea behind it now, though, is that, and let's go to the next page on this one here. So we went, I told you, remember that number before? We had in the copy center, we had 5 units that we were running, larger machines, all right, and 3 smaller machines, 2 large, 3 small. I now moved to 14 machines inside there. So there are actually 14 points of contact from a command console that the operator is actually able to disperse. I took my workforce, which was actually 3 people. I now run it with 1 person. All right, so I had immediate savings right off the bat just in personnel costs. All right, and as we went through the buildings, as you can see, and you know the buildings where there's more people, we have 3 elementary schools. We have a middle school and a high school, similar size, approximately 1,000, 1,200 students in the high school and the middle school. Elementary schools vary anywhere from 350 to 550 students. So as you can see, we knew, what we were doing as far as scaling the building and determining where we were going to go. So we have 36 units minus the 13. All right, many, many more points of contact inside the buildings, which is really what we wanted. We wanted 1 on every floor inside of the high school. We wanted multiple inside of central office. Every office was going to have one. They didn't all have one before. It was usually in a room that was adjacent to the offices. Now all the offices, plus the other points of contact inside the building. So we had 36 points. We'll go to the next one. You want to go back to that, Mike?
No. So everything that Ed has, I have. And everything that Ed and I have, Rosalind has.
Yes.
The model is the strength of the solution. Because we've all found that when you funnel work to the copy center, you maintain the balance on all your machines. One important piece that Ed didn't mention yet was we have a quota for every teacher. But if you send it to the copy center, it's not on your quota. So how do you
that's the
get
carrot.
traffic to the copy center? Get the teachers to use it. How do they use it? Well, you can only make, what are we up to, 1,000? We give teachers 1,000 copies on the glass in their department or wherever they are. But if you send it to the copy center, it doesn't count on your quota. So you force a lot of traffic down there. Why? Because you have 9, 10 machines to send it to. And what happens is your machines in your buildings don't get abused. You get longer life out of them. He's about to show you savings. We just found, we started this, I'm in my 5th year. We had a 4-year lease on the equipment. I'm in my 5th year on the same equipment. I got to buy this year. Equipment wasn't abused. So now I'm just paying a maintenance fee. Next year, I don't have to buy again. So now I get another year of savings. All I need is a maintenance contract. You never had that when you leased it. I had a company with an X that we were working with, and you know, it was a fortune. So now I'm about to enter my 6th year. I just keep getting the savings on top of savings. So it really, that's the key to it.
Sure.
So I'm going to hand it back off to you there.
When we take a look at this here, so just in year 1 alone, obviously I changed the structure quite a bit, besides the learning curve that the staff had. People said, you know, how long are we going to have to wait to get my work back? You know, is it going to be like 2 weeks, or what is it going to be? So in Roslyn, I had some extremely lofty goals, and we used to do 24-hour turnaround. We then elongated that to 2-day turnaround because the volume was high. I actually run a 4-day turnaround. But the truth of the matter is, most jobs are turned around within 24 hours, and they're delivered back to your building, and they're waiting for you downside the main office or wherever the pickup point is for it. We reduced immediately by 70,705. That was year 1. Now you take and you play that out over the 5-year lease, you can already see the savings that you're going to have. You're going to be receiving the state aid back on that also, so you have to keep that in mind. But we were doing that in the old model too. We've increased the efficiencies. Teachers begin to change the culture of printing, and I'll talk a little bit about what the culture of printing has been. I spoke a little bit about that, which was basically is that every time my 2nd grade teachers would send over to the copy center for the summer those 3 paper boxes filled with jobs to be reproduced, all right? And then that same operator would stand there and he would say, oh, she's ordering for the grade level, I need it for 6 sections, I need this reproduced 6 times, and back would come these cases upon cases of work, all right? And they would just basically be taken by the custodian, would be delivered back to that teacher, who then would sort the work out and then give it to her colleagues, all right? So that took a lot of time. All right, so here's what we're doing today. We have total accountability. I know what you're doing, when you do it, how you're doing it. I have copies of what you're doing. I have administrative oversight at this point in time. Anything that's questionable that comes across the system, I can look at it, I can see it. Our curriculum and instruction person is looking at it. He says to me, he goes, wait a minute, why are we reproducing a book? All right, that's not appropriate. All right, we need to buy that book. All right, or, all right, we have people that are reproducing things that they actually don't use ultimately because they used to plan a year in advance. You only have to plan a couple days in advance at this point in time. Or if you want, I will tell you, and I'm going to show you a little trick about what our 2nd grade teachers do today and what a number of my teachers do by department now. All right, we had the HID card for job tracking integration, so you actually have your ID cards, which you already own. Copy quotas for all staff. All right, we give students quotas, we give staff members quotas. All right, and depending on where you are and what your needs are, we've never turned anybody away. We'll increase your quota for the month. We'll re-up you if it's necessary. So if you have something that's coming out, a big review session, and you need it right now, they really become what I call my emergency photocopies, because you have 1,000 copies to use at a machine in a building. But if your planning is good, all right, you may never use those 1,000 copies ever. All right, so we have savings that are there. All right, we also have, everything's digital. It can be done from a copy machine, any mobile device, a computer at home, administrative oversight of all submissions for copyright purposes, my Copy Center portal, which I have pictures of, and I'll show you all what that is. Mobile device printing is possible, testing and grading. So when we all went down this road of the Common Core standards and we came out with these benchmark exams that we first started doing, which I don't do anymore, which is originally pre and post testing for those where we had to, I needed a solution that I was able to create my own tests and actually take that information and turn it around rather quickly. And we didn't want it to all be just multiple choice. We actually wanted there to be some type of writing that was involved with it, depending on what you were doing it. We can custom design actually all of our forms now. We took Scantron and we put it on steroids. Scantron couldn't hold a candle to what we're doing today. All right, so we basically eliminated our Scantron and we moved over to Lexmark testing and grading. It gives the teachers back an electronic file so they can import it right into their Power School, all right, if they want to take those grades. There is also a possibility of marrying those two together. If you have a real great technical team, you can actually import those straight into your grade book. And you also, it creates graphs, so it lets the teachers actually reflect upon their teaching and say to themselves, you know what? Everybody got questions 1, 7, and 25 wrong, right? Maybe I didn't teach it well enough. Maybe I need to go back and revisit that. Something's wrong, all right? But it allows us to help our teachers teach better, to understand what they're doing. It provides data back, and the teachers love the reports that come back because it's an automated canned report, and it basically just comes right out. So you feed it in, you get it back, you know what you have, you know what the class average was, you see the people that were on the top, you see people that aren't being successful, and you're able to retool and go back into the class the next day. We used it for that. We have the copy tracking on all the printers. So basically, I wanted there to be a single point of management for managing all of our printers, not just the large MFPs that we're talking about, copy machines, the printers that are inside the buildings. Remember, there's still a lot of printers that are out there. How many of you have a mixed bag today, basically, of multiple vendors that are out there? You could have Hewlett-Packard, Epson, everything is out there, all right? So I still have a couple running around out there at this point in time, but as the machines have been aged out, I've moved over to Lexmark, and that's helped with my toner management. I know down to the dollar what I've spent for the past 4 years for every single toner cartridge inside the district. And you're talking over $100,000 a year. All right? We brought that number down from $150,000 4 years ago. Why? Because of the quota management that we've introduced. So there's a lot of savings in actual products that we're using. Question?
You have numbers of paper savings? I know
Yes. Patrick works on those, and we actually look at those once a year, and there's been a reduction, and I'll let Patrick, he can talk about the latest numbers. We just ran them again. Patrick, you want to comment about that now?
Well, actually, we just ran his numbers. We're coming up on year 3, but through the first 2 years, we did over 5 million pages saved each year.
That's a lot of paper.
Yeah, and a lot of that's just human nature, because when people think you're watching, I mean, I like to tell this anecdote where I looked once, and I emailed one teacher and said, that's not an appropriate thing to be copying. Word spread throughout the district. Nagel's looking at every single thing that comes across. Don't, make sure it's work related. Once. That was like 4 years ago. I probably go, if I go and do it now, I cut down paper even more. But that's you know, human nature. Yeah, I'm going to copy my kids' stuff. I'm going to copy a book. I'm going to copy. No, it's got to be appropriate to what you're doing. And the other thing you see is as you make more and more things electronic, and we get into this mobile device that we're all going to one-to-one initiatives, and we're using mobile devices, printing drops. The dittos, you don't need the dittos anymore. So those are a natural byproduct of this also. But and all of the, I wanted to, go ahead, go back.
To about monitor job status. Teachers will
Oh,
often
right,
say is,
jobs.
I don't know if they printed my test. Where is my test? All right, it will tell them inside of the status. All right, it'll say this has not been printed yet. And by the way, it's not due until next Monday. All right, you put the date. You can pick the date in the future, so you can decide you don't want to get them until the day before you're supposed to give the test, a week before, or you can just go to the shortest timeline, which is usually 4 days inside of our system today. You could resubmit previous jobs, which is really key, because once it's in there and you come up with a good indexing or labeling, so you know that I would do integers, and I did integers always in September. So I would label all of my integers, all right, handouts that I would have, and I would do them basically in some logical sense so I knew that I could recall them in the future. It saves the original Microsoft Office documents, plus it saves the PDF. So you can either resubmit the job again unchanged, or you can open it up, save it, and then resubmit it back in. So you want to change the date, or you want to change some of the problems that are actually on these original documents. Shared workspace. Teacher said to me, is like, you know what? We don't want that one person to be responsible for making all the photocopies on our second grade team anymore, Ed. what we want to do is we want to share with all the second grade teachers across the districts. We want you to be able to give us a place, a portal, where actually we'll be able to see and share the work that we choose to share with our colleagues in second grade. So we created folders basically by department and by grades, all right? And yes, every year now, instead of actually taking the boxes and shifting them over to somebody else in the second grade to be able to submit them back to the copy center, the person now does it all automatically. They open up their computer and they submit the jobs. And by the way, they don't submit for a year anymore. They submit for no more than a month. We've kind of like worked on that. There's no reason to be sitting on all that paper. And many times you find as instruction changes, you may not need the same things over again. So resubmitting and having everything sit in boxes in a closet was not the way to go. We own the equipment in 5 years. I've accelerated that payment process with the savings that we've had. Internal cloud printing for all virtual clients. You know, we use a lot of VMware, so it helps us, plus of all of our mobile devices. Print release, it reduced the waste. If in 24 hours you don't pick up those jobs you sent to the copy machine, I delete them, all right? And they know that, all right? And I will tell you how many times someone races and says, oh, I gotta get this right now. I need 50 copies of this, I need 75 copies of this. They run, and they forget about it and they never come back for it. But that doesn't mean they can't have it. All they have to do is just basically resubmit it again, and they can pick it up at the copy machine. We found 24 hours to be the best. Special education, which we have worked with before, a lot of times students are required to receive notes. A lot of times teachers are running to a copy machine and they basically putting them on the bed, and they take a student who has the best handwriting in our class or takes the best notes, basically reproduces them, or the actual aide actually will do the notes. Today, using our one-to-one initiative, we're able to take those, we can scan those in, the aide will do it for the child, and we're able to distribute them automatically through a distribution list. So it actually helps with us getting this out to the kids, and they can recall it.
Print release. So two other benefits of print release, just to be clear, I could have a meeting at the high school and be in my office, and I forget stuff. So I will send the copies to print release. And when I get to the high school, I say, oh, I forgot my copies. I just walk up to a high school machine, put my tag on it, and it'll print the job. So it's a network solution. So you don't have to be, it can be anywhere on your network to release the job, which is a nice feature. The second piece is you'll hear from a lot of people that use their own, must have their own little printers because it's secure. I hear from psychologists all the time. I must have my own printer because I have sensitive materials that no one else can see. I took his printer. I said, use print release. Because you can send the job to any machine, and it's not going to print until you release it. It's not going to sit there for anybody to see. So as soon as you walk over, you'll get your private stuff, and no one else will see it. So it's a great feature, especially if you're thinking about eliminating those individual printers that a lot of people have. It works very well for that. You still have individual printers?
I do. I have a bunch of Lexmarks that were bought previously. They still continue to exist. We do not use print release on them, but
Right,
we
like
found that
250s?
it's been a decrease. The 360s or the 460s. 460s is the model we use. Next slide. What does the end user see? A little hard to see from here. There's a link actually where you can download this document, which is in the beginning of the presentation and the end, and I'll have that available for you. Basically, you show up to Copy Center, you just type in the word Copy Center on any computer inside the network. These are your active jobs, so this is where you're going to see all your work. So if you put in 50 jobs, you're going to see them in there. You're going to see when you submitted it. You're going to see the date you needed it. It's going to tell you, you can change that also. Completed jobs, all the jobs that have been completed. So if you want to know if your test is ready, if you want to know if those handouts are ready, all right, the booklet that you've asked to be made, it's there. It'll tell you it's been completed. So you know it's there. And the last is that this is the resubmission process I was talking about. So you have an edit button and then you have a trash button there. And you can actually take the documents. Here's the public folders I was talking about. They're arranged by school, so our second grade teachers are able to share across buildings. Anyone's able to share anything that they choose to. And we also have your own here, so you can create your own folders too. So as a math teacher, I would have arranged all the topic areas by course. I would have put them in there so I was able to recall those and send those back to the copy center when I was going to use them in advance. And I don't have to resubmit those sheets in there again. They've already been scanned in there. So remember those second grade teachers that basically used to send over the 3 or 4 cases of reproduction for all 6 teachers in that grade level in that building, right? That person is now doing that digitally. And we've actually changed an entire paradigm about how they would process the paper. It's not being done the same anymore, and we've seen major reductions inside of our original utilization and less waste. Let's go one more. This is the copy center. This is just the layout of it. These are the 13 machines, the way that they're laid out. We have our, basically we have our heat table here, which basically shrink wraps. We only have one color machine for the district. You have to have, we really in general don't print in color most of the time because we're really trying to push people getting it to the students in the one-to-one initiatives over their iPads. Everything's in color on an iPad or an Android device, whatever your flavor is for devices that you choose to use. All right?
Quotas on coloring.
Say it again?
You can have
Color.
a different
Yes,
quota.
we have
on-
different quotas. You don't have 1,000 color copies that you're capable of having. We basically give teachers about 125 a month. Students for special projects, we're not stopping anybody. If you need something, like we have some photography classes that run, when you're taking the photography class, all final prints go through the teacher. So you're able with Print Release Pro, we actually have a high-end color printer, which every time we fill that printer up costs us nearly $1,000 for all those toner cartridges in color. Right? So now the only person that's able to print to that printer inside of our photography lab is that teacher. So she will do all final copy work. We create a folder that all those kids have access to. They're able to submit to the folder, right? And the teacher prints the work out or designates a student to do it. So we know people aren't wasting that $1,000 worth of toner on 55 draft copies, only the final prints. And I will tell you, they do an incredible job in that class. If you copy this down, bit.ly, you can copy down that link down there to this presentation. So if you'd like to get a copy of this presentation, it's there for you. Well, the machines are smart enough, they email you and tell you they need it. All right, so we're not keeping anything out in the field. All right, and we have techs in the buildings every single day, so we know when the low-level indicators are going off because they're emailing us and telling us. And at that point in time, either we drop something with the secretary in the main office, et cetera, but we're really moderating. We have one single warehouse and point of storage now. All of our toners located in one enormous warehouse now.
Which makes the inventory and tracking your POs a lot easier. So it all goes from one spot and then out from there to the buildings.
When I first came to this position here, we actually had over probably about 250 toner cartridges that actually expired. And we're talking about big ones. There's no expiration here. I only have a 10% margin. That's all I keep. All right, and the idea is I want to keep the money, and I want to keep the money inside that purchase order and the money that we put in there, and I elongate. Obviously, it can go from year to year also.
It also minimizes the number of different types of cartridges you need. So when you centralize a similar machine district-wide, you're buying the same toner cartridge for those machines. So in the old days, we had like 100 different inkjets. All of that's gone. You're buying, I think we're down to like 6 different model numbers. It makes it a lot easier to manage.
There's only one color laser inside of every one of our schools, all right, and that's inside the library. That's where I maintain it. So the librarian basically can see what's going on and what's being printed, et cetera. When you see how much it costs in order to buy those toner cartridges, all right, most of the things that we do, color is not required. All right, and especially with the digital age and more one-to-one coming, I expect ultimately to be in 3 through 12 in the next 2 years, all right, with one-to-one devices. So I expect that this number is going to come down even more now. People can receive and send faxes from their desktop computers, and we find that the app that Lexmark has, which is basically downloadable, it allows us to set it up in the machines. So you don't see people at a fax machine anymore. So, and we've eliminated, quote, the fax. Right? The fax is actually inside the computer, which converts it over and sends it out. We have our own transportation department in previous district and this district, so the delivery is free because these buses just basically always running. So they get the drop off throughout the day, plus have the mail person. So the truth of the matter is we increase the number of delivery times during the day.
Yeah.
So there is definitely, that needs to be factored in there too. I was looking to leverage my transportation system. All right? I have all these buses. All right? They go between buildings dropping mail off, et cetera. Why wouldn't you use them? And we do.